Hey, Film Spotters, over the years, we had managed to streamline these top 10 shows down to about, 3 hours, 3 hours 15. We had so much fun talking to Michael Phillips and Alison Willmore about the best films of the year. The show ended up being a little over 4 hours, maybe closer to 4.5 hours, right, Josh? So we decided it was best to split these into two. You're going to get two parts.
The worst thing about this, Adam, is I was all dressed up for our video version for the show proper. Mm-hmm. Now we had to jump back on to explain all this. And here I'm just wearing an old hoodie. I mean,
I know. We're casual.
Well. We'll manage. Here is part one of our top 10 films of 2025.
What kind of a show are you guys putting on here today?
You're not interested in art?
No.
Now look, we're going to do this thing. We're going to have a conversation.
From Chicago, this is Filmspotting, celebrating our 20th year. I'm Adam Kempenaar.
And I'm Josh Larson.
Hey, I ain't mean to scare you. Thought y'all done forgot about me in here. Come on, open the door, let me on out of here.
Stay. It's you?
Of course it's me, open the door.
That ain't your brother.
If the first half of the movie year belonged to Ryan Coogler's Sinners, the second belonged to Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another.
Sensei, please.
Courage, Bob. Courage.
That's it. We'll see how the two fare this week on our top 10 films of 2025 with special guests Michael Phillips and Vulture's Alison Willmore. It's all ahead on Filmspotting.
Hey, thank you, Sensei. Thank you, Sensei. Thank you. God damn it. Viva la revolution!
Welcome to Filmspotting and welcome to our guests. I can't believe it. For the first time on one of these end-of-year roundtables, God knows we've tried to make it happen in the past, from Vulture, the film critic, and formerly Filmspotting SVU, Alison Willmore. Alison, thanks so much for being here.
I am so happy to finally be here. I know, Adam, every once in a while we talked about whether we could pull this off in Iowa City, which is where some of my family members live over the holidays. That has never come together. Someday, Iowa. But
someday we'll
then,
all descend on Iowa City together and do it there. That would be wonderful.
It is a lovely place.
It's it's my favorite. It's my new favorite Midwest college town. I mean, it's just, it is. It's fantastic. It's great.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I look forward to that.
Guys.
I look forward to that, Michael. It always has been a treat.
Let's do 6 through 10 here, and then we'll relocate.
There you go.
Josh, can you make that happen?
Oh yeah, we'll just need a 18-hour break between sessions, but I can do it.
Okay, we might need that. We might need that. Of course, the other voice and the other face you might see if you are watching this is Michael Phillips. I did the math. This is your 19th year participating in one of these top 10 films of the year shows. Can you believe it?
I just can't believe I started when I was 15. I mean,
I know, I was a prodigy.
I was one of those young prodigies,
Indeed, you were.
No, it's been great. And I have a lot to say about all the lists I've done up till now. So if we can just make a little time for the previous years, I'd appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
We will strap in. In addition to hearing from Alison and Michael, we will get picks from several other critic friends, their choices for film of the year, including Alison's former SVU co-host, Matt Singer. He does not disappoint. He never does. You'll also hear from members of our sister podcast, The Next Picture Show, and friends from NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour, Letterboxd, the Unspooled podcast, the Filmcast, and many more. This is how we approach the best of year roundtable on Filmspotting. We take all the titles that comprise our individual top 10 lists. It turns out I think my math is right, 27 unique titles among our 4 lists. We look for where there's overlap and, of course, where there's not. And we start with those outliers, and then we arrive at some consensus. We may arrive at that consensus 6 or 7 hours from now, whatever it takes. As far as consensus, there is some this year. There are a handful of films that made 2 lists. There are 3 films that made 3 of our lists. And there is one film, only one movie. I'm guessing most of our listeners can guess which movie that will be. One movie that made all 4 of those lists. Also on the show, we are going to announce the 5 finalists for the Filmspotting Golden Brick Award. Josh, of course, this is the award that goes to what or to who?
I think the language we've been using lately is to a newer emerging director, so relatively new filmmaker. We also like to, and this goes hand in hand, we like it to be an underseen film, one that at least maybe up until the end of the year, folks might have missed out on, and try to shed some light towards that filmmaker and that film. And man, do we have a great batch. We had a great, huge, long list to choose from, and we've winnowed that down to some fantastic finalists.
We have. Listeners will also share their Film of the Year choices, and we will incorporate some of their wonderful feedback, including a title or two I don't think I even heard about this year, so that will be fun. Just a quick note up front, as you may be listening wherever you're listening, in your car, at work, on the Peloton, who knows what, and you're hearing all of these titles and trying to write them down, you can go to filmspotting.net whenever you would like. Click on lists at the top of the page. You will see all of our choices and all of our special guest number 1 picks as well. filmspotting.net/lists. Okay, Michael, Josh, Allison, before we get into those picks, do we want to share any thoughts about the movie year overall? We're not great here on Filmspotting when it comes to the business, and I don't know if there's any good news when it comes to the business of movies right now. We tend to just keep our heads down and focus on the movies themselves, the quality, if you will, and our personal reaction to those movies. But you guys are a little bit more plugged in terms of the daily grind of covering movies in the industry. Allison, when you think about the totality of the year, what stands out to you?
Well, I think maybe even more so than the last few years, I've gotten a real, old world is dying, new world struggles to be born feeling about the movies. You really get the sense that all of the old monster franchises that were powering Cineplex moviegoing in particular for a while, like those are all they're at the end of their kind of arcs, like Marvel, I'm not sure what's going on there. DC does not seem to be like kind of built on with the same aims anymore. You've got, some of these other like Mission Impossible and things like that are just like, have come to an end. I think that we've had in some ways a really exciting bunch of original movies, Sinners and One Battle After Another, Weapons, which all happened to be released by Warner Brothers, which got the reward of then, being sold off to massive companies that are both fighting over it. And I feel like neither situation bodes well for the future of movies if you love original films, if you love going to theaters. Netflix on one side, really, despite what they say, it's hard to believe that they really will commit to theatrical experience in the same way. And then Paramount is so, at this point, like tied into pleasing the president and pleasing and kind of like bending ideologically, that the idea of them having another major, media arm that will be forced to do the same is just incredibly depressing. So I feel like it's really hard to know what to think. But I do, if there's any hope for me, it is just the fact that things like Sinners, things like One Battle, like were so talked about, like they really have such an enormous cultural footprint, like and even something like the Minecraft movie, which I still haven't seen, so I cannot communicate with the young people because we have nothing in common. I don't know how to use their language, but that was like a huge phenomenon. Like kids wanted to go to a movie theater. Kids wanted to like play along, with all of the Rocky Horror-esque things that were traditions that got built into it. I mean, all of those feel like promising things to me, at least on the basic kind of commercial movie-going standpoint. But I don't know. I do not love the feeling that we are constantly pushed towards a future in which we all just sit at home watching whatever content an algorithm pushes up to us on our individual screens. That sounds kind of lonely and isolated and like surrendering to, a corporate taste as opposed to seeking out works of art and entertainment that are surprising and individual. And So I don't know. I'm not really sure what the future will hold in terms of the business in that way. But it's been so chaotic for so long. I also feel very comfortable just shrugging and being like, we will find out.
Yeah, Michael, where are you on that?
Yeah, I mean,
using
I couldn't.
Alison's words, the incredibly depressing to hope or hopeful spectrum.
Yeah, it was a really good year. I mean, that's the short answer to all of it. And I think it was a really good year for all the reasons Alison just said. Plus, this, what you want at the end of the year is the reminder, or maybe the discovery, by way of somebody else's lists or thoughts about what was happening way the hell outside the studio system. Films from any number of markets, most of which are multi hyphenate co-productions, basically festival material. It has a hell of a hard time finding anything like a traditional theatrical release, because that just doesn't, I mean, and it is a sobering moment, certainly, for distributors like A24, where, and many others, but where you pay, let's say, a pretty good pre-COVID level fee for a film like Sorry Baby, which I think will come up in the conversation later, and there's, like other films that had the bad luck to be released, early mid-COVID, Sing Sing, for example, just couldn't come close to making it back. I think that audience is not around anymore. I think the hardening thing is definitely what Alison said. To have films of the size and the artistic, the glaring artistic freedom of Paul Thomas Anderson's latest film, One Battle After Another, and Ryan Coogler's Sinners, it's great. They found Sinners in particular, found the audience it knew it would get, even if everybody in Hollywood has this bizarre case of racist amnesia, thinking there isn't a black audience that will support. You're right. Everybody turned out, and even when the white people started going, it was like, hey, pretty good, and it's just like they never learned the lesson. The chilling thing for me at the end of this year is to think back at what, and I've quoted it before, but there was an interview in the New York Times with David Zaslav, a couple of years ago, just after Barbie, and it was a big, kind of just profile of him and what he might do, in the conglomeration of everything out there. And this is ancient history now, but somebody pointed, and the writer pointed out, well, what about Barbie? Barbie made 100. He says, that doesn't really affect our bottom line. I mean, the quote, I'm paraphrasing the quote, but it's like, okay, when a film that made $1.5 billion, more than $1.5 billion, doesn't affect your bottom line as a movie concern, then it's the audience's concern, because that's, what is their life? The one thing we cannot argue with is that all this, whether it's Netflix or Paramount or just Trump and Trump Jr. officially buying the studio through the United States government. I don't think that's really going to happen, but it's going to mean less films made every year and far fewer films in theaters. And so this is the question with Netflix. Are they really interested in living with the theatrical window model of like anything like, 4 weeks and up, or are they just going to dump as much as they can onto the streaming thing? One for them, one for us. Used to refer to projects, and now I just think it refers to platforms, except it's going to be 3 for the streamer and 1 for the theaters. And that's what worries me the most going into the new year.
Yeah,
Josh.
I'm feeling a similar deep unease on that question. And it's one I've sort of, had a let's wait and see attitude really until this year for some reason. I've long said a great movie can stand up to any viewing environment. I go back to my discovery of Hitchcock in my bedroom as a kid with the little camping TV my grandpa gave me. And I watched Hitchcock on Channel 9, WGN in Chicago, and fell in love. Okay. So that was like 8.5 inches by 5 inches, that screen. That doesn't mean great movies should be watched in any viewing environment. And I'm starting to think we're getting to that place where it's no longer an option. And it is this Netflix situation with Warner Brothers. And as you both have pointed out, the unique, crowd-pleasing, box office busting films that we got in Sinners and One Battle After Another coming from Warner Brothers, and the prospect of that happening again, just going away overnight is very dispiriting. I think the death of theatrical has been talked about for a long time. This is the first time I personally have felt like I could see it or I feel it. And it really does matter. Great movies do need to be seen with others in the dark on giant screens, even though they can hold up elsewhere. It's like the most amazing taco you can find. It's going to taste great driving, rushing to get an errand done in your car. It's going to taste great. You know what would taste better? Eating it on the beach at the taco stand in Mexico. Okay. So I just still want that option for my tacos and my movies, I guess.
Yeah, I will say also to go further, Josh, I feel like for me, it's not even that the streaming experience can't be a great one. It is that I feel like the end goal of the companies behind streaming, well, especially Netflix, is to be like, we would just like you to kind of neutrally absorb, whatever we kick up to you. And I think, and we're going to expect you to be on your phone at the same time, and I feel like
yes, that
experience is just, I have done it as well, but like, I don't think that it is in any way you can equate it to like, the experience of just giving your full attention to a movie or to anything. I think it's telling that ultimately, like, Netflix's big rival is YouTube, right? It is not actually like one of the big studios, like the studios I consider kind of already done. Like they are competing for attention and for content, not competing in a film world necessarily. And I think I want a film world.
Yeah, I think, and I don't like a world where those of us in cities like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and a tiny handful of others are going to be the more protected areas in terms of like our theatrical options. I think the early predictions 5 or more years ago about what's going to happen with theatrical movie going period was always that it would be winnowing down, getting rid of shaving multiplexes, until we're about half the numbers we are now, how many there are nationally, and they're bunched up in the bigger cities. I don't love that, but it does. If it turns into something like that's more of a boutique experience, I hate that word because it just sounds exclusionary and it sounds undemocratic and it sounds a lot of things. But it's why a lot of us wanted to live in cities like this anyway. But I don't know. Josh, I have to ask you, what is your movie-going option for a theater where you live, where you're staying this year in Scotland? Seriously.
Yeah, it's, the town I'm in, St. Andrews, is relatively small. So there is a theater, long story, that's just been opened, but it's also a virtual golf venue, actually owned by Justin Timberlake and Tiger Woods. St. Andrews is a, historic golf town. So yeah, that's, I can walk there, but otherwise there's a town of Dundee that I can take a bus to that has, the Regal, our sponsor here on Filmspotting, they have cinemas, so you can still get that big screen experience. There is a small, the DCA, the Dundee Contemporary Arts, that is screening more like, Gene Siskel Film Center type titles, which is a great option. And then otherwise I have been bopping over via bus and train to Edinburgh to see some of the stuff there because they have a great art house film option as well. But, I think you're right, Michael. We're going to that. A sign of hope, Alison, you mentioned what has given you hope is, you go to any of these repertory screenings, whether it is at the Siskel Film Center or the Music Box in Chicago, and they're sold out. I mean, it's just huge attraction for audiences of all ages. And that's exciting. And I think that's becoming more of an attraction for people than it even used to be. Now, to your point, Michael, is that going to be available in smaller towns? Maybe the demand will become so great that this is something that a one-screen theater in a smaller town can support, programming older movies projected. But I don't know how confident I feel about that. And I think you're right, Michael. It's going to be more likely for the select few who get that. I'm just thinking about, movies, not only like Sinners, but Adam, we did an anniversary review of Back to the Future this year. Where is the populist Cineplex masterpiece that the suburban kids in, just some smaller state with no major city? Back to the Future played there in the 80s. Where is it going to play? The new Back to the Future. Where is it going to play in 5 years? I don't know if there will be a place for something like that.
I don't want to stretch this out too much, but Alison's point about the Minecraft movie, well over $1 billion. It was like the old days, meaning 2019. And that happens not predictably or reliably, but it happens every year. Every year there's a film like that where it's like, okay, it's IP, times 7, and it's all, that's all it is. But I regret to say I haven't seen it either. But I mean, they got a real director to do it, and apparently it's got some laughs, and God knows it had the appeal. But I think with those, it happens every year. So I don't think it's the folding of theatrical is tomorrow or next year, or hopefully not even this decade. And it does go on, but it's going to take the wherewithal and the will of whoever owns these conglomerates that are 17 steps above actual production, but are responsible for funding it, to believe in it and to say, yes, we still can make money. And yes, theatrical can drive, streaming activity and popularity just like it always has when they've coexisted together. So I really hope that they don't just listen to the last person in the room on these decisions.
Yeah. And I think also, just to close this out, I feel like, this is a conversation that's larger than just theaters, though theaters is obviously something that's very important to me. It does feel like a larger conversation about public spaces and public life, and I think in particular, the pandemic really disrupted so many things about us going outside and being around other people and doing things in kind of communal settings. And I do feel strongly that it is an important and kind of social good for us to go out and do things and be around other people and not all just kind of like default to being sealed up in our houses as much as possible, And I think that moviegoing, like the kind of collective viewing, not even in the kind of starry-eyed like cinema sense, but just in being like, it is so nice to be with a group of people and like to be laughing along or bored together or, like wrapped by something on screen together. It does feel nice, like just as a thing that you are doing in public with a group of people. Like it is a different experience from just like communing with a work of art or entertainment at home on your phone or on your screens of choice. And I think that we are better as a society when we all go out and do things outside of our homes in addition to being home.
Right on.
My only question after all this is, Josh, how are the tacos when you're hitting a few practice rounds at the virtual golf? How do they
Famous
taste?
Scotland tacos.
So I have really fallen in love with Scotland, and I am desperate for Mexican food.
That's where that came from.
Two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah, two things can be true at the same time. Yeah.
I think also if you see a Mexican restaurant anywhere out there in the UK, don't do it. Just don't do it.
I'll add a hopeful note, which is there's a Substack I follow by Ted Gioia, great, very wise critic of many things. And he talked earlier in the year about, in this increasingly algorithmic world that you were talking about, Alison, he does truly believe that there will be an increased value put on finding human individual opinions that you can truly trust. And I hope as we're doing this show, I hope that's the case. And I hope that there are people out there listening that hopefully will value our opinions and can trust our opinions as we dive into this show. And as we're going to now transition into talking about the movies themselves, I think, Josh, that's usually the barometer for us when we're reflecting on the year. It's how hard was it to form this top 10 list? How fun was it, but how hard was it to chisel down from all these titles that we thought were pretty great to actually get it down to 10? I'm guessing it was a challenge for you. Is that the case?
Yeah, it was a challenge on the back end in terms of I had a clear number one by far. I had maybe a handful after that I knew were really strong. And then I had maybe 20 movies that were all just such a delight in so many different ways that my top 10 ended up being a constantly evolving puzzle of which ones did I want to actually pick to represent the year. It was tough. It always is. And this one I think speaks to the depth of quality 2025 gave us.
With that, let's get into some of our choices. And we are starting with those outliers. So these are movies that only made our individual lists. And we're going to begin with the outest of outliers. This doesn't mean they're crazy choices. It certainly doesn't mean they're bad choices. It just means maybe they're a little bit of a surprise. Movies that truly are a surprise to the people listening, or maybe many people listening just haven't even heard of these films. We'll see which case applies here as we get into these picks. I'm going to say, Alison, with your choice, it's the former category. It's a good pick now that I've seen this movie, but it is one I did not see coming. So enlighten us.
I don't know why you didn't see this coming. You guys hate comedy is what you're telling me.
Yeah, apparently.
I think that The Naked Gun is absolutely one of the best films of the year. It is certainly, I would say, the most enjoyable, like purely enjoyable theatrical experience I had, even at a press screening, which, as we all know, is filled with people who are like me, dead inside. There was a lot of laughter. There was just like a lot of just audible pleasure in just taking in this incredibly silly movie that is just jam-packed with jokes. And you know what? I would nominate Liam Neeson for an Oscar. I know that Best Leading Actor is like a packed category this year, but do you know what? Like the incredible like action movie face, the deadpan that he brings to this deeply ridiculous role as the son of Frank Drebin, I think he's so good in it. I think that years of making what I believe have been described as the geriatric action movie, the stage of his career in which he has played all of these deeply serious action heroes has made him just the perfect comedy hero for this movie. And I think that like the kind of the delight in just like the kind of just throwing all these jokes out there and having them just be existing in a moment, I think the whole montage with the snowman, incredible. The throwaway bit where they're retrieving a car that's crashed by using a giant claw machine, and everyone watches and is like, ooh, when they miss. But even just like a throwaway line, I think my favorite part of the movie is a part where Liam Neeson is like muttering as he's walking through the police station, I guess you really can't fight City Hall. And Paul Walter Hauser, as his partner, says very seriously, no, it's a building. I just love that. I love it so much. And I really enjoy Pamela Anderson's scat singing face.
This one's for my electric new friend, Richard Kane.
Wow.
Sassafras chicken and D. Make it extra lumpy, boys. Hee babadoo bim babadi da, skabim bim 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 babadi da. Beep it up, beep it up, beep it up, beep it up,
I think it's great. I think Akiva Schaffer understands exactly how to get the sensibility of these films that were made in a different era of comedy, studio comedy. And I think there was an awareness of how difficult it has been to do a big studio comedy these days, to the point where they even did a PSA where Liam Neeson urged people, you have to come see this for the sake of the studio comedy. But I think that this was just a perfectly silly film. I enjoyed it so much. I want them to make a dozen more of Diminishing Returns until I get sick of them and be like, let it die again. That is all I want. Bring them back. I want more.
So some of the sequels may not appear in your top 10, but this one is at number 7.
This one is there. I think, there's only the proper comedy franchise arc is to just end in a place where you're like, what did I even see in this in the first place? So yeah, that's what I want from this.
Knowing that Josh is someone who doesn't appreciate this sensibility, the Airplane, Zucker Abrams parody sensibility, I can't wait to get him back to this side of the pond and Clockwork Orange style make him watch this film. It's going to be great.
So I'm going to do it because I know you are a big fan as well, Adam, and
it's good.
You hinted
it
might come up at our wrap party for, funniest moment pick. So I'm going to watch this and hope that, here's my hope. Yeah. Historically, these haven't been my movies, but it's in my DNA. My dad, just growing up, he loved these, right? Airplane, original Naked Gun. And so I've got it somewhere inside. My hope is, Adam, I've aged into it. 51 is when it's going to kick in, right? This is when I will finally get these comedies.
Well, I think this is, if you're really going to complete the whole arc of turning into your father or your grandfather, then you'll start watching the roadshow version of "It's a Mad, 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 Mad World" over and over and over. Well
Bring
into
it on.
the wee hours. Yeah, a film I actually liked about as much as this Naked Gun remake. I love to laugh, and I'm not quite sure why that one. I kind of just watched it like Nipper the dog on the RCA label, kind of tilting his head, waiting for. To me, I love that first iteration of the Naked Gun Police Squad on TV. I loved it, and it was also the closest to the source material they were ripping off, like M Squad, which nobody remembers, and all the Quinn Martin cop shows. And I thought, I got a lot of laughs out of a couple of the Naked Gun movies, but I kind of went through what Alison's talking about, midway through the second one. So I don't know. This one didn't seem to have the deadpan knack or interest. It was just kind of a big, broad, violent action comedy with some satire in it, but not enough for me, I guess. So I don't know. I just. I didn't hate it, but Alison, I feel bad that I can't agree with you because I respect you a lot.
Well, it's fine, Michael. It's fine.
No,
I'm judging you silently.
No, I can't go on. I'm sorry.
But she doesn't need your support because, fortunately,
I know
and
I'm
fittingly,
right.
Yeah, she knows that,
She
also
right.
She has the support of her former Filmspotting SVU co-host and former IFC Films partner in crime, Matt Singer, who submitted a voicemail. We asked him for his pick for his favorite film of the year, and you're going to get his actual pick for best film of the year, but it turns out that The Naked Gun was indeed one of his favorites of the year, and he is going to proselytize for this film, and it's so appropriate for the conversation that you all were just having about how important it is to see movies in the theater. We're going to hear about Matt's communal experience, the transcendent, the spiritual experience he had watching The Naked Gun with other revelers this year.
Hello, Filmspotting. This is your very old friend, Matt Singer, with my contribution to Filmspotting's 95th annual Best Movies of the Year episode. I can't believe it's been that long. Congratulations again. Wow, what an achievement. Anyway, I'm very confident that my number one movie of the year this year, one battle after another, it's going to get more than enough love on the show. So instead of yakking on about that again, I'm going to instead stump for what I consider my single favorite theatrical experience of 2025, which was the new Naked Gun. So the Naked Gun films, all three original films, are canonical texts to me. They are as sacred as anything in the Bible or the films of Mel Brooks. So personally, I was very nervous about anyone tackling this holy work. But to my very pleasant surprise, director Akiva Schaffer and his team absolutely nailed how to make a Naked Gun in 2025. You just recreate the same style of non-stop nonsense from the originals. And with all due respect to the great Paul Thomas Anderson, who made a fabulous movie this year, I would argue there is no scene in any film this year more sublime than Liam Neeson's Detective Frank Drebin Jr. chewing out Pamela Anderson's Beth Davenport for accidentally erasing his TiVo, filled with all the season 1 episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He gave it to her with specific instructions not to plug it into the internet. And what did she do? She connected it to her router. Do you know what that means?
That means gone. No musical special. No Sander. No Spike. No Cordelia Chase. No Daniel Osborne. No Willow meets her doppelganger episode. Nothing.
Sorry, I didn't know they were so... Frank, we're in the middle of an important conversation.
Just stand there.
Sitting in a crowded room of strangers, collectively laughing at that scene so loud and so hard that we all missed the first couple jokes in the next scene was genuinely one of my big highlights of the entire year. Maybe not just in movies, just highlights of my life, as pathetic as that is. It's true. And it really, it serves as a reminder to me that while we are constantly told that the only thing that will bring people out to theaters, the only thing theaters are good for anymore are for quote unquote events, you know, in the right theater, in the right crowd, any great movie becomes an event. Anyway, have a great 2026, guys. Thanks.
I haven't ranked the best bits in The Naked Gun, but I think I'm willing to go on the record and say that deadpan delivery by Liam Neeson of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer TiVo bit, that's top 3. It's maybe top 2. Matt's right. So thank you, Matt Singer, for that. And thank you for supporting Allison. Michael, you have to go back and watch it now, Clockwork Orange style as well.
I do. I have to press laugh first, and then
I know I'm not watching it with Michael when I catch up with it. That's for sure.
No, you don't need those bad vibes at all, Josh. Let's keep the good vibes going. You also have a off the beaten path choice here, and it's another comedy.
Another comedy. I guess my vein of comedy, maybe it's One of Them Days. All I can say is One of Them Days made me laugh more than anything else I saw at the theater last year. And especially just these rapid fire exchanges between Keke Palmer and SZA. They play LA roommates who are facing unfair eviction from their apartment. You know, it doesn't need more, I guess, than that, to Allison's point and Allison's pick for me necessarily to put it on my top 10 list. You make me laugh this hard, you've got a shot. But I do think the topicality here is to its credit as well. I mean, we are facing an avalanche of American crises this year. And, you know, you could lay them all out before you probably get even to the affordable housing shortage, but it's one of them. It's important to a ton of people. And there's something exciting about a smart comedy addressing that with sharp, satirical humor. I mean, hat tip to Cat Williams, for those of you who've seen One of Them Days, as I call him Lucky the Prophet, just standing outside of the payday loan office, warning people away. Great recurring gag.
What are the interest rates? There. Damn, I thought that was the year of establishment.
If you don't have the money this month, you're not gonna have it next month. Get out.
Is he here every day?
Please.
What did y'all do to this here? He is so negative.
You know, don't discount the director here, Lawrence Lamont's work, because great comedy like this, it requires smart directing, and he knows how to set up and how to frame a punchline, of which there are many in addition to that fantastic interplay between the two leads. So yeah, this is my final plea. I've mentioned it a couple times on the show throughout the year, but my final plea of 2025 for everyone to catch up with One of Them Days.
Also, right in line with Allison's endorsement of Liam Neeson in the Naked Gun, I would nominate Keke Palmer for Best Actress. Seriously, I mean, she was
on my ballot for the Chicago Film Critics.
I mean, she rolls so. There's not a scene that she can't activate. Some of the material is better than others in this film, I think, but she just scores and she has a great ear and eye for how to propel every scene. Like none of the laughs she gets stop the action at all. It's always just kind of in the service of the next beat. She's great. I mean, she's been on camera more of her life than not, right? She started as a child actress and, big star early on in that realm. And I mean, she's barely in her 30s and she has just got the wiles and the skill level of like comic screwball stars of old. She's great. So yeah, no, I like the idea of nominating more people for comedy for actual serious awards consideration in general, and
she is great.
Yeah.
Josh, as you said, you put her on your Best Actress ballot for the Chicago Film Critics Association. I had her just off. She was in there for a while, and then as I saw more movies, just got bumped off into that 6 to 10 range. But One of Them Days is currently available VOD. You can also see it on Netflix. And before we get serious, and Michael, in the case of our two picks, deadly serious, perhaps, we're going to keep the laughs going here a little bit. We have a voicemail from someone our listeners should be familiar with. She's been on the show a few times as a guest host and as a voicemailer, and we know that Alison is certainly familiar with her work as well at your publication. This is Roxana Hadadi.
Hi, this is Roxana Hadadi. I am a critic with Vulture and New York Magazine, and I'm sure that my number one movie is on this list already. Pretty much any given day, it switches between Train Dreams and It Was Just an Accident. So I'm not going to talk about either of those. But what I am going to talk about as the movie that has stuck with me, surprisingly, this year, is Roofman, which I was predisposed to like because I like Derek Cianfrance's movies. I like Channing Tatum. I like Kirsten Dunst. I like all the pieces of the movie. And I was surprised by how it came together, and that it was marketed as a comedy, which was wrong. It is being described in interviews, like when I spoke with Cianfrance, as a movie sort of about a father's love and what he is willing to do. And I think that is more correct and fits more within Cianfrance's tradition. I'm someone who loves a well-done father of daughters story.
And this is John Thorin from New York.
Oh, New York. That's far from here.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
So John, he made a very generous toy donation.
Oh, that's so kind of you. We couldn't have come at a better time.
No, I mean, and really like Christmas and birthdays. And just gift-giving time. I mean, I don't know. I just love kids.
You have kids, John?
Well,
is it family or are you?
And what I think this movie offered is a rejection of the fact that we have happy endings in our lives. I think the movie actually really demonstrates how untrue that can be. And there was something about its refusal to really stick with any genre that I still find really compelling. So that's my pick for my sort of unloved choice of the year is Roofman.
I said we were going to keep the laughs going, but Roxana's correct. I just caught up with Roofman because of Roxana's recommendation and because of producer Sam Van Halgren's recommendation after he heard Roxana's voicemail. And it is being improperly sold. It was mismarketed as a comedy. It has a few laughs in it. Channing Tatum's character is a bit of a goofball, but it's a pretty serious movie, more like you would expect from Derek Cianfrance. And it is a good movie. I love that Roxana is highlighting this film, not the comedy so much that I set it up to be, or again, that the marketing team behind it has made it out to be, but a good film. Alison, you've seen it. What do you think?
I do not think it works, but
Okay.
I not because it's not. I mean, I would agree. It's not a comedy. It does have like a few light touches, but it is much more about this guy who can't like help himself, even though he's in hiding and on the run and is broken, out of jail, can't help himself but like just get involved with this woman and her family and this community. I felt I needed it for me. I wanted it to acknowledge a little bit of essentially the creepiness of what he was doing in terms of the kind of lies he was spinning, in terms of like needing to kind of love bomb everyone, to be such a kind of like people pleaser, to the point where he has built this whole persona up. I felt like there was a tension there that the movie never addressed because it was just too fond of that character. And I understand why. I think Channing Tatum is very lovable in that role, as he is often, like it's a kind of role he's very good at. But I appreciated, like, yes, the way it started off as a bit more of a comedy and then just kind kind of kept this tonal tension there throughout as you kind of wonder when is all of this going to fall apart.
I think that's a fair criticism of the movie. Channing Tatum is charming in the movie, and he's playing a character who obviously gets by a lot on his charm, even as he also is a very goofy and overly goofy character in a way that does cross over into creepy at times. And he gets called out on it a little bit. And I think you do see in Kirsten Dunst's character, mainly you see it in her eyes. You see it in the way she looks at him sometimes, that tension in the way she feels about him. But the movie probably could push that a little bit more than it does. I agree that the movie seems to love him maybe more than it should. I really love Roxana's point, though, about the movie being ultimately a rejection of this notion that we expect from the movies too, that we're going to get these happy endings sometimes, and things don't always work out that way. So an inspired pick, I'll say, for Roxana of Roof Man. And then we are going to tilt things a little bit more to the serious side of the scale now, Michael, with your choice, which is a documentary, and one that has certainly gotten some acclaim this year, but I'm not sure that many of our listeners are familiar with. Please tell us about your, I believe, number 8 film of the year.
Yeah, it's my number 8 pick. It's called Orwell, 2 + 2 = 5. This is a really good documentary from Raoul Peck, whose films include I Am Not Your Negro, the James Baldwin sort of exploration. He's a filmmaker who uses all these different tools of nonfiction film and personal essay to create documentaries that are bigger and go more places while sticking to their main subject than almost anything else going right now. And this is about George Orwell in the final phase of his life as he was writing the dystopian novel 1984 on the island of Jura, I think is it pronounced Jura, off the coast of Scotland. This was in the 40s. The novel came out in 1949, and that was the year before Orwell, who was born. Eric Arthur Blair died of tuberculosis, and there's a lot of correspondence that weaves through the documentary. It's really touching and beautifully written. And his life in England and in the British Empire he was born into, and which formed his entire personality, is just as well dramatized as the making of that novel. And it's also a film that it talks to America right here, right now, in terms of truth and lies, and the phrase thought criminal and thought criminality, which is Orwell's perpetually topical way of getting at how not just authoritarianism or fascism, but how just that sort of governmental impulse can grow and take seed and mess us all up. The one drawback I'd say of the movie, having just seen it once now down at actually the Refocus Film Festival in Iowa City this summer, which is all about different adaptations. Peck uses a big bunch of archival footage from film and television adaptations of 1984. It's useful footage, but you're also looking at work that isn't really terrific. No one's really made a great adaptation of 1984 yet. But Peck's film, I would have to say, even that's not strictly at all adapting that novel, it's the best film related to it I've seen. And since we're living in a nation right now where the current administration is sort of determined to make that new math, if you want to call it that, of the film's title, 2 + 2 = 5, the official language, it's really a film we need right now. And it's just also just an elegant piece of nonfiction filmmaking. So seek it out when you can. Orwell, 2 + 2 = 5.
The very concept of objective truth is fading out of this world.
I'm going to set down what I dare not say aloud to anyone.
This prospect frightens me much more than bombs.
I think you adequately explained this, Michael, but
adequately?
Just having adequately, more than adequately.
That's a little light.
Explain this, but I just want to underscore it, having just caught up with this because it made your list. I didn't expect the extent to which this movie really uses Orwell and his work and his vision as an instrument more than anything. It's not really about Orwell. It's using Orwell as an instrument to be a polemic, to highlight this notion of fascism and to want to make a point not only about America, but about what's happening in a lot of countries
all over
around the world
right, all
at
over
this
the
time.
world.
Yeah. Raoul Peck's Orwell 2 + 2 = 5 is also available VOD. And that brings us to my outlier, my Outest of Outliers, which is a movie. I put it in this category because up until a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, I'm not sure I had heard of the film. It's one of those December movies. I don't know if this happens to all of you, but in this rush of trying to get prepared for the end of the year, you end up seeing movies pop up on other lists, and they are movies that sometimes flew completely under your radar going through the year. And then you see some of the acclaim and you check it out and you're blown away by it. And that's the case with the film I actually have as my number 3 of the year from Grasshopper Films. It's called Afternoons of Solitude. It's a documentary by director Albert Serra, the Spanish filmmaker. He made Pacifiction in 2022, Liberté in 2019, The Death of Louis XIV in 2016. I haven't seen any of those films. So Serra is a new director to me. I think it got put on my radar because this was a film that made Richard Brody's list, I think at number 3 this year. And it was also number 1 on Cahiers du Cinéma's list. So Afternoons of Solitude, I'm thinking, what could this movie be? It sounds like a very intense, arty film, certainly with subtitles. It's going to be a very meditative film. And then I see that it's a documentary about a bullfighter. Not what I imagined, but I thought, I'm in. I have to check this out. After I saw it and after I loved it, I was searching for some information about it in terms of its release and stuff in our inbox, Josh. And back in July, we got an email about it from a listener in New York City, Zach Stetson. Completely overlooked it, but I'll read it now because it sets up the movie nicely. He said, would highly recommend seeking out the documentary Afternoons of Solitude by Albert Serra. It's a fascinating, hypnotic exploration of the bullfighting world and the toxic masculinity that accompanies it, all told through a distinctive queer gaze. It can be alternately quite disturbing and difficult to watch while also being incredibly enthralling and beautifully photographed. I think it's coming to Chicago this weekend at the Gene Siskel Film Center. Hope you check it out and maybe give it a mention on the show. Obviously, did not check it out that weekend at the Gene Siskel Film Center and did not mention it on the show. Just now saw it, and I knew this was going to be one of my favorite films of the year 6 minutes in to this movie. Wow. Sarah's camera observes the subject, this bullfighter, Andres Roca Rey, in his hotel room after a fight. His back is to the camera. He's wearing his white traje de luces, the suit of lights. After a fight, he's disrobing with the help of a personal attendant. He needs help getting out of it. He needs help getting into it. You see both of those activities. We see some blood spatter, but as he turns to the camera, you see that his beautiful white suit is completely covered in blood along his abdomen and thighs. And it's just one of the most arresting cinematic images of the year. Roca's slender, regal, almost saintly figure. It's like he's just suffered for our sins. That's how I felt looking at him bathed in this amber glow of this hotel room light with the bright red spatters of blood and the crimson red of his tie and the belt that he's wearing. And Zach said it. That scene, the movie itself, it's beautiful. It's disturbing. The talk when another man enters the room is of a surgeon that he needs to meet with and the wound. And the whole time, Roca is just going about his post-game routine, if you will. And the conceit of the film, or the formal approach that Serra takes, is he confines all the filming, or most of it he confines to the ring, the hotel room, and the shuttle or the van that transports Roca to and from the ring. He's either arriving in full regalia or he's departing, usually in medical scrubs. And the camera is just fixed to the seat in front of him, unobtrusively. So we sit with him and have to contemplate how he is possibly contemplating the battle that either awaits him or that he just experienced. There's no talking heads, there's no history lessons, there's no voiceover. It's just pure observation. And if you struggle watching any animals suffer, it's a brutal sport. You probably shouldn't watch this movie. The bulls are put in the ring to be taunted and killed. And I don't want to romanticize it, and I don't think Sarah romanticizes it. He certainly doesn't want to let us avoid seeing that brutality. We watch the agonizing deaths of the bulls. I watched in horror for a lot of this movie, but I also watched in awe of, I'm going to borrow the words of the men who are part of his team, Roca's immense balls. That word comes up a lot. Masculinity is a key theme of this movie. How closely to the bulls he operates, that's the expectation. How closely he cheats death again and again. That moment you anticipate and sometimes get, where total control devolves into total chaos. And the craft of the bullfighter, the technical and physical precision that Sarah captures with his camera. For me, there was something profound in Roca's solitude, the solitude of the title. He's surrounded by thousands of people in the arena. He's supported by this team that's always around him in the ring and in the van and sometimes in his hotel room. But in the arena, it's just his will versus the bulls. It's only his life that's on the line. And even thinking about it in cinematic terms, you have a system that makes it all go. You've got a hostile media, a fickle audience. This is all mentioned in the movie, or you observe it, and Roca's in the middle of it. He's the star in the classical sense, and none of it works without him. It's such a purely cinematic experience, and it does also. This movie lets me establish my theme for my list. I always end up seeing a connection between my picks once I get them all on paper, as if there was something sort of subconsciously guiding my choices. And this year, boy, 2025, what a year! This is going to be such a cheery list. I was drawn to characters from different parts of the world, different cultures, different worldviews, customs, you name it. But all, it seems, locked in a struggle between past and present, and usually marked by some form of trauma. In Afternoons of Solitude's quiet frames, this archaic ritual clashes with modernity, evolving into an elegy for men like Roca who choose to dance with death. It stunned me, and it caught me completely by surprise. It's available on Mubi, but some other VOD platforms as well with a subscription.
Great. I can't wait to see it.
Has anybody seen it?
No, I haven't yet.
No, I haven't seen it.
No.
Yeah, you're right, Adam. These are the ones that we'll get to one like this later on my list that, only vaguely aware of, but you see it in this rush. And I think it's more of a testament to the power of a movie that can do to you what you just described in this season, right? When maybe it's even the second film you're watching in a day. It's not the pristine, always viewing theatrical experience we talked about at the start of the show. But if it grabs you within this own chaos we're experiencing, then it's extra credit. There's something extra special going on there.
Before we get to our next set of outlier picks, we do want to share another special guest voicemail. This is from our friend Mitchell Beaupre from over at Letterboxd.
Hello, Filmspotting family and friends. This is Mitchell Beaupre, head of editorial over at Letterboxd. So my number one favorite film of the year is Clint Bentley's Train Dreams. But since that's gotten a lot of love in various year-end wrap-ups, I wanted to take a moment to shout out my second favorite of 2025, Kiyoshi Kurosawa's masterful Cloud. Whether it's in the slow burn, eerie atmosphere, and introspective interrogation of 21st century commerce and capitalism in Cloud's first half, or the market shift into a balls-to-the-wall action thriller in the second half, Kurosawa had me on the edge of my seat with a movie that feels like it's constantly reinventing itself. The filmmaker trades on themes he's explored in the past in films like Cure and Pulse, while bringing them into a new, more chronically online than ever age. A 5-star picture, start to finish.
Thank you so much, Mitchell. And of course, thank you to Letterboxd for just being Letterboxd. We need Letterboxd in our lives always. And I'm going to vow, maybe I shouldn't vow because sometimes I can't deliver on my New Year's resolutions, but I'm going to throw out a New Year's resolution anyway and suggest that in 2026, I'm going to try to finally see a Kiyoshi Kurosawa movie. I haven't seen any of his
Marathon,
films.
maybe?
What?
Allison,
perhaps?
Michael, anybody, Josh, any of these films that you know for sure, other than Cloud, that I should see?
Oh God, that's I mean, I feel like you have to see the kind of J horror adjacent ones, right? Like I mean, they all kind of, I think, fit together, but I Cure, maybe you should start with Cure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems to be the popular choice, at least in the little bit of research that I've done.
I mean, like Pulse, I think is his maybe like considered like his most widely known one here, maybe. And I think Pulse is great, but maybe starting with Cure is the good way to go. Yeah.
If you want to start with Cloud, it's currently available on the Criterion channel and also some other VOD platforms. Next up, we are ready for our next set of outlier picks. These are maybe more obvious. These are titles that all have, or almost all of them have, some pretty major Oscar heat behind them. And Allison, you are up first. This is a movie that not many have had a chance to see yet. I believe it comes out Christmas Day, very much though in the Oscar conversation, especially for its lead performance. And I think it's your number 9 of the year.
Yeah, I think that Marty Supreme is just a spectacularly entertaining, chaotic, stressful, wonderful experience. I was very curious when the Safdie brothers split and went their separate ways to each direct their own movie, what that was going to be like. You know, the way that the Coen brothers split, and then you're like, oh, suddenly I see what each of you is bringing to this like group package. You know, you're like, Joel was kind of bringing the purgatorial sensibility, and Ethan was like doing the funny stuff. And now separately, you're just doing that, and I don't like it as much. But I feel like Marty Supreme suggests that a lot of what I have associated with the Safdie sensibility, the Safdie brothers sensibility, is still rooted in Josh. In particular, that desire to center movies on characters who are basically addicted to riding on the edge of chaos and like just like courting disaster almost compulsively.
Come on, he's right here!
Have you ever thought about what you're doing to me?
Give us our money!
One of the things that Marty Supreme does so well is take this very Safdie-esque hero and use him, Marty Mauser, who considers himself to be a kind of almost like chosen one of table tennis talent, someone who has a calling, someone who can't help but just has a duty to pursue his talent, even though there is no money in it and there is no real way for him to achieve the greatness he thinks he can achieve in the United States, at least. But just to use that character as this representation of the American dream in all of its compelling and repellent, best and worst. And I do think that this is the best role that Timothée Chalamet has done so far in that you understand why people you can keep saying yes to him, despite the fact that it always ends badly for basically everyone he ever meets, because he is so convinced that he is on the right path, and he is so convinced that he needs to be helped. And he is charismatic. He is also just so irritating, and he is also just like so destructive. This movie,
That's it.
like, brings like genuine destruction to a few people's lives in passing. But I enjoyed it so much. I think that like it beyond just the kind of thrill of watching this character careen on these different adventures, basically in his attempt to get to the table tennis world championships in Tokyo, despite having done a lot to just self-sabotage his ability to get there. I feel like it offers a lot of layers about how like Americans have self-mythologized, this like this idea of individual success, this idea of like being an underdog, the idea of like needing to win against all odds and needing to do it on your own, even if you're not actually doing it on your own, you're doing it by stepping on a lot of people. I think the ways in which it manages to be have this character be both so appealing and so kind of awful is an incredible art. And I think like it also just creates this like sense of like visual and oral texture and chaos. It summons a 1952 that feels entirely lived in and with like none of the kind of distance or sepia tone nostalgia that we often see. It like sometimes inadvertently attached to depictions of the past. Whenever we put it on screen, it feels entirely alive and lived in ways that I thought were incredible. It has such an array of great faces in like cameo roles in the background. You can do a deep dive into the cast list of this and be like, David Mamet, where was David Mamet? Isaac Mizrahi.
I still haven't figured that out.
Right. He's the theater director.
Of course.
Yeah, it's but it does have an incredible array of faces. It has some very famous ones, including Gwyneth Paltrow, who has been lured out of semi-retirement to play a retired screen star. I think she's great in this. You've got, Abel Ferrara, who got like applause when I saw this film at a surprise screening at the New York Film Festival. The room erupted in applause the first time he walks on, and then you absolutely understand that even though Abel Ferrara was making movies long before Josh Safdie was born, that he was always a Safdie character also somehow before such a thing even existed. I mean, this is a movie that casts Fran Drescher and Sandra Bernhard together in scenes together. Like the power of that. I just found it so alive, and I think like there are a lot of ways in which this movie has things in common with Uncut Gems, which was, I loved Uncut Gems and I loved the just enormous the understanding it has for those characters who, yes, like thrive on chaos and thrive on the idea that things could fall apart. But I think it feels more mature than that. And I think I've seen it twice now, and I appreciated it even more the second time in just the ways in which it grapples with, yes, a character who is so certain that he knows what he's doing and that he knows the path to greatness. And I do not want to spoil the end in any way, but I think it ends in this perfect note that balances the sweet and sour so incredibly. And in particular, really calls into question the idea of who the underdog is, and the kind of compulsive way we always tend to see ourselves as underdogs, even when we are very clearly not. I just think this is a really great movie, I think. And it made me think that also, yes, a lot of what I have loved about the kind of Safdie brothers sensibility also like lies not just in Josh, but in Ronald Bronstein, who has been the co-writer on all of those movies and is a co-writer here. And I think he and Josh Safdie seem to have a real kind of like chaotic mind meld together when they're making these movies. So he is, I guess, sort of the third Safdie brother, the uncredited third Safdie brother. But I think he does a lot to bring to these movies something that I find key.
I was just going to say, in the terms of Bronstein, works as editor for both of them on Uncut Gems and here on Marty Supreme. And to your point, Alison, about the chaos and the propulsiveness and being carried along through that, it's due to the writing, the performances, but the editing as well. So
he's great. If you haven't seen Frownland, Bronstein's film Frownland, I mean, that's a great kind of introduction to the sort of itchy, scratchy, comedy of panic that both Safdies and like that whole world, that whole sort of like loose conglomerate of filmmakers and collaborators, they all tend to work with each other, get at. And it really is that sort of, it's the humor of the self-inflicted wound, that's kind of what I get from the other films I've seen. And this is the film I didn't see, the one that hangs heavy. I did not quite get the time to see this, so I can't wait to see it, Alison. And I hope it just from the trailers, I see what you mean about it looking like in ways beyond how it's lit and framed, but it just looks like an artifact of 1952 in the best way.
Production design, costuming, everything.
Yeah, well, and the mustache. And the mustache.
His little thin mustache. It's shot by Darius Kanji, who is obviously like an enormous talent, beautiful. But I think like brings this really kind of like rich look to 1952 that I loved. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a movie, Josh, we may discuss in full after the new year, one of those Christmas releases that we end up talking about later. So probably don't want to say too much, but we've talked a little bit this year about my focus on sports movies, teaching a class about it. And as a ping pong film. I mean, Alison, it's like she wrote my syllabus for me, right? Talking about the American dream, underdog stories, inspirational, and the repellent side of that, the awful or the downside of that. It is all there, certainly, in this character and in this movie. And I'm sure we will get into how, if you had any doubts that this was going to be a Safdie Brothers movie in the vein of Uncut Gems, even though it doesn't mimic the same style of Uncut Gems, he is absolutely a Safdian hero in the vein of Howard Ratner and some others that we have seen. It will be a fun one to discuss in more detail if we get that opportunity. It comes out Christmas Day. See it if you can. An 11 through 20 pick for me. Absolutely. And we're highlighting Timothée Chalamet seems like a lock for a Best Actor nomination. So let's move to another voicemail pick for a film of the year that's going to highlight a favorite performance of the year for this voicemailer. And this actress also seems like someone who's going to be in contention for Best Actress at the Oscars. This is our friend Melissa Tamangia from Bellingham, Washington.
Hey, Adam and Josh. As I reflect on what movies find their way most deeply into my heart each year, I think it's often the films that impact me in ways I can't quite trace or move me for reasons I don't initially understand, so that I'm feeling a flood of emotions, but my brain is still kind of scrambling to catch up. And The Testament of Anne Lee from writer-director Mona Fastfold was a film like that. And part of what I loved about the experience of Anne Lee was I was not at all sure initially I'd be able to get on board with the film. Even though I love musicals, I had this, oh, this is a musical moment that quickly morphed to, holy hell, what kind of musical is this? And is that the kind of dancing they're going to be doing the whole time?
All of us have suffered on our journey. We have made tremendous sacrifices to receive the greatest love that one can experience.
So I think it was perhaps my very resistance in the beginning that made the surrender by the end of the film so intense, because by the end, I was certainly completely in the film's grasp. And I honestly still don't know why a film about the founder of the Shakers, something I know or care little about, got me so deeply. It certainly could be something to do with my own background, growing up in a charismatic church, always being a little scared of the weird and dangerous fanaticism, but being drawn to it and fascinated by it too. I mean, it might be something to do with the socio-political religious resonances in the American landscape today. It might be something to do with, for better or for worse, the fact that musicals always do move me, that sort of peculiar expression of song and dance that we really don't see anywhere else in life. And it might be something to do with the portrayal of a woman leader like Anne Lee. It's so vulnerable and so powerful at the same time. How often do we see portrayals like that? And maybe it's something to do with Amanda Seyfried, an utterly transformative performance. I don't know if it's any of that or all of that or something else, but I do know it moved me and provoked me like no other film this year and left me kind of ragged and raw. And also, well, ecstatic about the power of cinema. So The Testament of Anne Lee, movie of the year for me. Thanks, guys.
Our thanks to Melissa. Amanda Seyfried's performance is another one that I was very fond of this year, and Mona Fastfold's direction. This is a movie that seems very much of a piece with The Brutalists from last year in many ways. The direction, that film she co-wrote, of course, but the direction, the subject matter, it's heroine tying to the hero of that film as well, even though the subject matter seems like it couldn't be more different. And yes, I had no idea. This is the benefit of watching a film coming in. I think it's the benefit of coming into films, as I often do, knowing absolutely nothing about them, except that it was based on a religious figure in the Shakers. I did not know that it had any kind of musical leaning whatsoever. And this film is pretty much a musical. And those dance scenes, the choreography of those scenes, the camera work and the editing of those scenes are a wonder. That's the reason, the biggest reason for me to see The Testament of Anne Lee.
Yeah, it's a bold choice to do a religious biopic essentially that way, Adam. And I think for the most part, I'd agree. It works. they pull it off.
The idea of also just being like, how do you represent an ecstatic experience? It is something that is largely internal. So the idea of then channeling it out into a choreographed, these strange and beautiful choreographed numbers, I think is really effective.
That comes out in limited release on Christmas Day, supposed to expand to more theaters in January and maybe even on into February. So look for The Testament of Anne Lee. Josh, you're going to now take us to a movie that's getting a lot of acclaim for a key supporting performance, and it's your number 4 film of the year?
Yeah, Weapons, number 4. And, Amy Madigan's turn here as Aunt Gladys, it isn't even one of my favorite things about Weapons. To be clear, she's a hoot. But for me, it was a lot of the other stuff going on in this bazonkers movie from Zach Cregger's. Let me just list them here. The very concept, I was hooked the moment I heard about this idea that every child in this 3rd grade class, except for one, runs from their homes at 2:17 a.m. The same morning. No one knows why or where they went. The filmmaking here is just so assured and in control. From the imagery of those kids running down the suburban streets, their arms out to their sides, to the shocking set pieces. There are at least 3 that I don't think I'll ever forget. And speaking of, at the top of this show, when we talked about theatrical experiences and being with people, you want to do that for comedy, you want to do that for horror. And there is a moment here, I think the bottom dropped out on our theater, just like the floor disappeared and everyone just simultaneously had that sense of just being outside of themselves, which the best horror can do. At the same time, this is a very serious movie. I found it to be. I think it has a lot of potency as a Pied Piper inspired school shooting allegory. And speaking of American crises, getting them weekly, we just had another instance of this, right? It's relevant again this week. So Weapons, for me at least, I think it was this expert horror movie that tapped into that impotent rage that so many of us are feeling right now. Once again, when more American children or young people are being sacrificed at the idol of firearms. So add all those up, and yes, that Amy Madigan supporting turn, which kind of shows up and grabs the movie by the throat. I'm always looking for an excuse to add a horror movie to my top 10 list, and Weapons more than filled the bill this year.
I paid off a great amount the second time too, which certainly is not true of all even really effective horror films, because the contraption sprung and you know what's coming or whatever. But there's something about the way this thing zigzags and then makes this insane and completely successful leap into basically the most violent slapstick you can possibly get away with. I mean, the fact that it turns kind of screwball slapstick comedy in the last 15 minutes and pulls it off is just sort of a tonal feat that is, it's actually the sort of thing I love. And there are films, other films this year that sort of made similar mashup choices between like completely contrasting genres that pays off at great. And I think I really can't wait to see what that filmmaker does next. But this is a really strong movie.
Yeah, this just missed my top 10. I thought it was terrific, and I thought it was such a wildly unpredictable mix of really effective, creepy scenes, a few well-placed jump scares, but also, some like just outrageously funny aspects as well. I think, this has a great ending. I remember seeing it, at a press screening, and a friend of mine punched another friend just in delight, just like what happens at the ending. I understand the read of it as being, as you put, Josh, about being about a mass shooting. Though I also feel like one of the things I enjoyed about it was that it felt like it evaded anything, any kind of easy allegory. I think that even the shootings one is glanced at, but then also there's something weirder going on. And I think for me, ultimately, what was so successful about this film is also that it felt like it was grappling with a general sense of suburban disconnect, when we do finally learn what has been happening, in part, it is enabled by the thing that allows, this is just a kind of a typical small town, like in Pennsylvania, but where everyone just goes home to their houses at night. And, I think that is something that a lot of us do. But also because of that, like being kind of together, but also in isolation, you have like this kind of terrible thing that's happening in the middle of the community that the only person who really notices it is the unhoused drug user who just happens to be outside the community and actually pays attention to, newspapers piling up outside of this like neglected house. Everyone else's eyes just glide over it. And I think there is something that it gets at about the kind of loneliness of a lot of its characters because they are living in a community, but they don't really have closeness, including the teacher who it starts with, Julia Garner's character, who you start off and you think you know exactly what this character is going to be. She's going to be, made into a scapegoat by this community. And that happens. But also she just is much more chaotic herself than you would ever dream. And I love the ways in which the movie surprises you that way.
Hey, I want to talk to you.
I don't think we have anything to say to each other.
Yeah, I think you have a lot to say.
You and every other person in this city. Believe me, the message is loud and clear. I'm the problem. Got it.
You know what? I think that's the first honest thing I've heard you say. You are the problem.
What, you want to get in my face? You want to threaten me?
Nobody's threatening you right now.
You're barking up the wrong tree, okay?
You know what? This whole victim persona that you're taking on, it might have to...
That was such a plus to have a character written and beautifully performed that doesn't kind of isn't just there for sort of the audience identification figure or any of that. Mm-hmm. It's a much flintier sort of portrayal of somebody who's just kind of like, kind of bumper carring her way through her own life inside this crazy scenario. And it's great. And it's great to have a performance and a performer that doesn't sort of like seek the audience sympathy first.
Yeah. And I will say also, I want to shout out to Benedict Wong, who is at the center of, I think, probably the most disturbing scene in the movie for me, and one that happens in the bright light of day.
That's when the bottom dropped out on our theater.
Incredibly upsetting.
Also, to your point, Alison, I'm glad you said that about the allegory, because you're right. It is there if you look for it, but I would hate for someone listening who hasn't seen Weapons and is like, well, I don't want to go see a school shooting allegory. It's just available. And I think if it had been more explicit, I would not have responded as much to the movie. There's one image that I think that pushes you in that direction. That's maybe, it's been debatable whether that was a worthwhile image to include. But yeah, your description is apt, where it opens itself up to that, but doesn't necessarily have to be about it. It can be about many, many unsettling things.
Well, it's a film that came up in our opening discussion for a reason as one of the key original films of the year, right? And you mentioned it, Josh, and we talked about it during our review when it came out. Some of the most arresting images of the year in any genre. But not only that, within the horror genre, one or two images that are now just part of the canon when you think of great horror images. And to this discussion about what it all means, how much fun is it when you have a film like this? I don't think there was any movie. I'm pretty sure there was no movie all year. And maybe we can go back a couple years, Josh, where we got more email about a film and what it meant personally to people that we got to respond to on the show than this film. And it's great when a film gives you that much to dig into. And there is that much to dig into with Zach Cregger's Weapons. So I'm glad that it made your list. A very good film from 2025. Here's how good I think 2025 is. Richard Linklater, one of my favorite filmmakers, made two movies I loved this year, and I could only find a spot for one of them in my top 10. And somehow I still have this reputation as a cheater. You're even going to hear it, I'm sure, later in the show, even though I defy listeners to find the last time I cheated. Here's a prime opportunity. Did I cheat? No. Nouvelle Vague, guess what? 11 through 20. I'm just going with Blue Moon. And I am putting Blue Moon all the way up at number 4 on my list. I talked about my theme for this year, the past, Rodgers and Hart, including Blue Moon, My Funny Valentine, Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered. What a great song. The present and future, Rodgers and Hammerstein, including Oklahoma! Sardi's, the night the entire movie takes place, the date I think is March 31st, 1943. This is the nexus with Ethan Hawke's Lorenz Hart struggling to come to terms with his identity in this new reality. And the trauma stemming from his alcoholism and attempts to go sober, this split, this fracture from Rogers, and the heights that he clearly knows are inevitable for this new team, for Rogers without him. But one of the strengths of the film, and I touched on this during our review, is that the pain extends to Rogers as well. And you see his sincere attempts to reunite Rogers and Hart, whether it's out of pity for him because of where Hart is at in his life and career, whether it's out of nostalgia, whether it is out of love for him, or all of the above. You see the crushing defeat that Andrew Scott as Richard Rogers continually shows in his performance with every Hart misstep. And there are lots of Hart missteps. It makes Rogers almost a tragic figure in all of this too. And about Hawke, yes, Robert Kaplow, the screenwriter, and Linklater, they give him a lot of fun dialogue to spit out, but I'm going to say they don't make it easy on Hawke. They give us, the audience, those opening contrasting quotes. Hammerstein said of Hart that he was alert and dynamic and fun to be around. And then we get cabaret star Mabel Mercer, who said he was the saddest man I ever knew. They set the audience expectations that Hawke has to then fully embody that contradiction. And I was thinking back on our discussion about the movie, Josh, and I get why you compared him to Jesse from Before Sunrise. I think I might have even said it was a good comp. I'm going to at least disagree with myself anyway. They talk a lot. They philosophize. There's a grandiloquence about both of them, I suppose, but they really couldn't be more different people or very different or more different performances. Part of that's just due to the volume of words and the pace, but I also want to be clear. My point here is to underscore how much depth I think Hawke brings to this performance. Jesse is young and smart enough to know that he doesn't understand that much about the world, or as much about the world as he'd like to think he knows. He's a questioner. Hart, I think, is like Holly Hunter's character in Broadcast News. You know that great scene where the network exec says, it must be nice to always know or always believe you know better, to always think you're the smartest person in the room. And what does Jane say back? No, it's awful. I'm not sure Hart, who is always the smartest person in the room, would ever admit that it's awful. But I also don't think he has to, because we feel the torment. We sense it in every bravura turn of phrase, in every brilliant jab that he gets in, and he gets in a lot of both. I think there's so much radiance in Hart, but there's also a lot of desperation. And watching their minds at work, Hart's mind and Hawke's mind at work, that was one of my greatest movie joys of the year.
They should put my picture on that bottle. The whiskey that made Lorenz Hart unemployable.
It remains that much of a great movie-going experience, and that's why it's so high for me at number 4.
Yeah, and Hawke is very, very good here. I mean, for my CFCA ballot, just on the outside. So the level of dexterity at work is incredibly impressive.
Yeah, I think he's great. And I think also there are ways in which the scenario of the film could feel unbearably contrived. You know, I've talked to people who didn't like it as much, who are like, well, it's just a play. Mm-hmm. And I felt like, sure, I can see that, except that I feel like the ways in which it tries to just kind of look at this entire life through this lens and this, fictional, essentially, like fictional, night that in which he is watching everyone in his life essentially move on without him and understands that's happening. But I think it does it so well.
Yeah.
And I think this is also like a theatrical person, the idea like of him having an almost self-aware night, like Bleak Night of the Soul, in which he is watching. He knows all of this is happening. And I think one of the things that is so wonderful about Hawke's performance is that he plays his character as though he is, the talking is his way to kind of keep weaving this protective self-mythologizing shield around himself.
That's it.
But he keeps like kind of like running out. Like you can sense that he's like, his ability to maintain that is running out, And
Yes.
as soon as like he kind of stops, you can see the tragedy that he knows is there underneath.
If he stops talking, it's somehow the spell, it's gonna end. Reality is going to set in, and he can't have that happen. That's why he just keeps talking as fast as he is. That's the desperation that I sense anyway. And I'm glad you said that, because I do feel about the movie and the staging, it just doesn't feel, and here again, I'm in the bag for Linklater, but watching that film, I never sense that confinement. I think I don't think that gives Linklater near enough credit in terms of the cinematography and the editing, how they use that space, how they block where all the characters are in that space, how every time Ethan Hawke, how Hart turns, there is a motivation to every single edit and every single composition, how that space is used within Sardi's. I think it's a very sophisticated use of that space, even though it's a single spot or a single space movie, if you will. So
Yeah.
I'm going to praise Linklater and how he uses it, even though, Michael, I don't think you're as big a fan.
I was
of
a
Blue
little
Moon as
cooler
I am.
on it, and I like Linklater a lot. I do think, though, that one of the best scenes of the year easily is that extended conversation on the staircase after the opening night crowd from Oklahoma has kind of been, ushered in, and it's just obviously a monster success and will change everything, which Hart knew going in and knew coming out. And that scene between Andrew Scott as Rogers, who was a very bloodless character in real life, a pretty steely, cold fish, and you get elements of that, but you do get that sort of that melancholy farewell quality in that he knows there won't be many more conversations like this because this man will be dead soon.
So, Dwight Wyman and I have been talking about bringing back a Connecticut Yankee.
Terrific.
Yeah. I'm thinking of asking Vivian Siegel.
Oh, my God. Oh, it's going to run longer than Oklahoma. I'll buy 50 seats myself. I've got a new title. Oh, Camelot.
Well, I think we're going to stick with Connecticut Yankee.
Camelot, exclamation point.
Okay, come on, I've been serious here.
I'm always serious. That's why people find me so funny.
So I was thinking if you feel up to working, then maybe...
I've never felt better in my life.
Congratulations, Dick.
I think that's kind of the feeling you get, but that's and certainly Hawke has a lot to play of all that going on. But there's just a lot going on, sort of externally and under the surface, and it's like it's a wonderful 5-7 minutes, and there's a lot I like. Hawke, I have that slight issue where I just feel that he is, in an interview he talked about working with Philip Seymour Hoffman, and he said that. On the Lumet film Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, right? And Hawke said that his whole impulse and the performance was on his work in it was just to simply sort of show off to the co-stars he was working with that he revered, kind of just to impress. And I don't know what it takes for him to lose that impulse, even now, all these decades into his career. He's wonderful, but I feel that it's a bit of a trap playing this sort of garrulous and nonstop a character. He doesn't really quite sense when to deliver 100% instead of 115. And I even Linklater, who he's obviously, they have such a comfort level, and he's so, he's wonderful in Boyhood, Hawke, and he's been wonderful in lots of things. Great in First Reformed, really having to tamp down every actor's instinct he has to play a guy that buttoned down in the Paul Schrader film. But it's my slight issue with Hawke, and I think it's more me than him, so just disregard. Disregard my opinion.
I already forgot what you said. I disregarded it so strongly.
Thank you, guys.
Also, I will say I've seen a lot of conversations about Before the Devil Knows You're Dead and comments that Hawk has made over the years. And one thing he said about shooting that film is that Lumet was one of those directors, and lots of directors have done this over the years, especially when you have heavyweights like Hawk, but especially Philip Seymour Hoffman. And they have a lot of scenes together like that, is he pitted them against each other.
He did the Elia Kazan
every
thing.
day. Every day it was, can you believe what Philip Seymour Hoffman is doing? Look at what he did yesterday. Can you match that, Ethan? It was, everything was about trying to get him up to 115% to match what Philip Seymour Hoffman was doing. So I don't know, maybe I'll cut him a little bit of slack for that. But Blue Moon, if you haven't seen it yet, it is available to rent. It's one of those more expensive movies right now. It's $19.99, but you can see it on most platforms. We have one more. No, we actually have two more outlier picks here before we get into some titles that made a couple of our lists. And we're going to throw it back to you, Allison, a film that you have at number 3. Actually, up until the last minute, this was a movie that was on 2 lists. Michael jettisoned it for another movie, but we know then that you're a big fan of it. Actually, I know that all 4 of us are big fans of this movie. It just turns out that, Allison, you're the only one that made room for it on your top 10.
The courage of my convictions.
Yeah, it turns out Richard Linklater made 2 pretty darn good movies this year. Steven Soderbergh, I think, made 2 pretty darn good movies this year. Which one of those 2 made the cut for you?
Well, as much as I loved Presence, his unusual ghost story movie from the start of the year, Black Bag, his espionage dinner party thriller / salute to a marriage. I think is like one of the most underrated films of the year. I it's one of those movies, and I do feel like this year maybe I weighted the kind of the delight I took in the actual stuff of movies a bit more this year, maybe because also it has felt I don't know, like something that has felt more important to me lately. Just the sheer pleasure of a movie-going experience. But I also, Soderbergh, he makes a lot of these, really kind of almost experiments of movies, these doodles of movies that are usually based around one particular star and have, one big idea to them, either stylistically or in terms of concept. And so to watch him do something bigger, even though this is not an enormous film, it is certainly a kind of larger film than he's made in a while, has just been such a wonderful reminder that I think there's maybe no one better working today who knows how to appreciate movie star quality in his cast. I think Out of Sight, Erin Brockovich, the Ocean's movies are all just tributes to people on screen looking just like demigods, gods who come down to, more beautiful, more charismatic, more compelling than the average human being, and just reveling in those qualities on screen. And I think this movie does that again. And to watch him kind of take that back up and just to prove that he can do it so effortlessly when he wants to, I appreciated so much. I think in particular, Cate Blanchett and Michael Fassbender as these married spies who have come up with, particular rules about how that can work when they have to keep enormous secrets from one another. But they're also just unbearably hot. They live in this incredible London townhouse that becomes the scene of 2 very tense, funny, thrilling dinner parties. One of which they drug people to try and get a secret out of them. But I think just the ways in which this is also a John le Carré riff that is what if George Smiley were actually in a great marriage? What if it's so explicitly trying to play off of the idea of George Smiley, but to be yes, what if him being a wife guy wasn't this kind of sad, funny aspect of his character, but actually part of this is the kind of defining quality of his life and his surprisingly happy home life. I think that this movie just moves along so well and so wonderfully. It really is just so pleasurable to watch. And it has this great supporting cast. Marissa Abela, I think, is a particular delight.
Incredible.
But Tom Burke, Naomi Harris, Regé Jean Page, Pierce Brosnan as a higher up. This is a kind of nefarious higher up. I think it's just such a good time in just in a lot of the basic things that we just like look for in a movie going, which is to say like larger than life stars, like twists and thrills and humor and sexiness. And it offered all of those things. I made me so sad that it did not become an enormous hit. It's one of those movies that I think will eventually like end up on Netflix and then people will make it their whole personality. But as is, it kind of came and went in theaters. And I think the people who did see it, I feel like most people I talked to loved it, which it made me sad that it wasn't able to catch on more. I think it's great. I
was puzzled too that it wasn't a bigger hit. I really enjoyed it, and it's my number 11 now, as of this morning, as Adam can tell you. But I finally saw a different one that I wanted to see. It's when is it David Koepp? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, David Koepp.
When Koepp and Soderbergh get together, as they did with Kimi, the film for me from the worst of the COVID years. I mean, that is such a great, bracing, zingy sort of variation on Rear Window, a little bit, and when they are just magic together, when they just kind of have this sort of pleasure principle foremost in their mind, it's just a relief too from so much blockbuster viewing that we've kind of had in our lives, where the stakes are always universe ender, scenarios. In the Marvel realm particularly, but just to see a film that has sort of the right size and amount of tension and conflict. It's not, it's witty first and it's action oriented second, and maybe that's what didn't attract the audience. People, I think, are just kind of inured they come to expect a certain amount of rote, casual sadism on the fly, and the film is not really about that. It's about higher things. I love it. I mean, it was an easy second watch too. So
you're right. I do think like also the ways in which it outsources, instead of having a major action set piece, it has like a verbal set piece, right? Like it's a joust over a dinner party table.
Yeah, those dinner parties. Yeah, those are absolutely the highlights. I had a similar journey to you, Michael, with Black Bag, in and out of my top 10 list as we approached the end of the year here. I thought, I'm a fan of Soderbergh, but not the champion that so many other people are. And I thought, oh, finally, I get to have a Soderbergh film on a top 10 list, because it just feels like something I should have at some point. But you know what? As I said, this just turned out to be a great movie year, the more movies you saw. And so that's sort of what happened with Black Bag. I did give it a nod because I think, to your point about the dinner parties, Alison, the secret ingredient to Black Bag is the editing, which is Soderbergh doing that as well. And that first dinner party sequence is just a masterclass in the art form of editing. You could just show that and be like, this is how deciding when to cut and what to cut to and how long to hold something can communicate everything you need to communicate in a scene. I mean, there's a lot more going on there than that, but to me, that's the crucial element. So yeah, huge fan of Black Bag as well.
A great scene with Marissa Bela, who I've championed throughout this entire year. That scene where there is some actual espionage going on. There's this whole satellite thing and Fassbender and Cate Blanchett, but it's still really just a dialogue scene. It's mostly verbal. We're seeing the espionage part is occurring over footage, and all of the tension, all of the real action is what's just happening in the room between two people there. And that's what all of the good action in that film is either happening between characters and what they're saying, or between the words of what they're saying. And everything, Alison, you articulated in terms of the dynamic between the married couple here. What's still so fun about this movie is, because it's a really smartly written espionage film, is that we know that everything is up for grabs, that we can't trust it. They're spies. We can't trust anybody. There's double crosses and triple crosses and maybe quadruple crosses. And so we never have our bearing, and we're constantly grasping. And just when we think we may understand the dynamic of a relationship, we never know quite what we can believe. And that's the fun of this film, right? Is that the way it just sort of leads us along, constantly hoping for some solid ground. And I agree, Black Bag is one of the highlights of the year. 11 through 20 for me, but didn't quite make the cut. That brings us to, though I'll mention, on Prime Video and other VOD platforms if you haven't seen Black Bag yet. That brings us to our last outlier pick. It's the number 2 film of the year for Michael Phillips, but I think appropriate for this title, I'm going to let a woman do the honors here, Michael, and jump in ahead of you. Let's hear from Amy Nicholson.
Hey, film spotters. Amy Nicholson here from the Los Angeles Times. You don't need me to go on about why Sinners is the best movie of the year. So instead, let me gush about my number 2, Nia DaCosta's Hedda, starring Tessa Thompson as a hell of a good Hedda Gabler. If you've seen the Ibsen play, any of its versions, it starred Ingrid Bergman, Cate Blanchett, Rosamund Pike, Maggie Smith, Glenda Jackson. You already know why this role is held up as the female Hamlet. But Nia DaCosta's brilliant adaptation showcases everything that this mean, nasty story already is, and she adds to it. She's got these smart casting, staging tweaks that somehow, please do not haunt me on this, Henrik Ibsen, somehow make this Hedda feel even more pleasurable, even more alive.
You sing.
What?
On edge.
Hedda, darling, what are you up to?
You'll see.
Well, you're not leaving, are you?
Best to resist temptation. Oh, come on, Eileen. You're stronger than that. What has got into you? Sometimes I can't help myself.
Jesus, these people. This movie is fun, it's gorgeous, it has so much to talk about afterwards, including raving about the costumes, the cinematography, the supporting performances by Nita Haas and Imogen Poots. If you are still finalizing your top 10, you gotta make time for Hedda.
I tried like hell to match Amy on this. I mean, I saw Hedda very late, and this has been sort of my peculiar year that, I left the Tribune in August. I didn't see a lot of these movies that turned out to be many of the best 20 I saw this year. I didn't see them in the usual pace. I saw them in great gobs of viewing in the last couple, 3-4 weeks, maybe probably 2 or 3. And to see all this quality was almost disorienting for me, frankly. And Hedda I thought was just ripping, I mean, I can't really weigh in on whether or not Hedda's going to work for anybody if they're not a little familiar with the Henrik Ibsen play, which is driven by sexual blackmail, which is a good start, for getting your interest, I think. But it's, as Amy sort of alluded to, it's about the trophy wife of the world's dullest academic and her incurable itch for this secret love from her past, right? But I can tell you this, I've never seen a stage or a film version of this play half as juicy as what Nia DaCosta's come up with here, starring Tessa Thompson. And it's just a great wholesale reinvention of this 1891 play as a 1930s Somerset Maugham type period piece. But that's really just in setting only, because it's just this genuinely thirsty romantic tragedy the way it's handled here, and it opens up to all kinds of issues, really dramatically vital issues of sexism, racism, queer sensuality, black accommodations of the white stockracy, we'll call it, that could drive a woman to just about anything. I've always been really transfixed by this play, even if I haven't seen great productions of it. People have been debating what makes this character of Hedda so memorable is because and yet people were always perplexed by it. Every back in 1891, people were like, what is she? Is she supposed to be sympathetic? Is she a monster? Is she a victim, predator? What is she? And even Henry James, a pretty good writer actually, did a little criticism, and he was intrigued by the play, but said, I don't know what type of woman this is supposed to be. And that's the kind of stupid response that has limited people's ideas about how to activate this character and this material. But I'll tell you, no one has figured it out better than Nia DaCosta, because it's not one type; it's 17 facets going on at once. It's in every scene between Thompson and Nina Haas. Imogen Poots, fantastic. Catherine Hunter's great. It's just alive with electricity, and it's also DaCosta's most fluid direction to date. She's always been a good director, but this is the most, I think, enveloping work I've seen from her. Really wanted to give it number 1. Tried. but it's my number 2.
I like this film a lot, and I really I appreciate your insights into the ways in which that character has been received or baffled people over the years. Something I really loved about DaCosta's interpretation is that it suggests almost like this character is just like waging this kind of capricious war of destruction, almost just because she's so kind of dynamic and smart and has no outlet for it, right?
No outlet.
It's just
Thwarted.
She is bubbling over with just like all of this potential that she sees no way of like channeling into anything other than this life. Yeah. And so it almost overflows into a desire to destroy the things around her, including this woman she loves, you know, like just out of a need to mark the world in some way. And I loved that.
Love it. And Ibsen may not have been that much more enlightened than Henry James, but he said, I think this character has poetry deep down. That was the way he phrased it. And it cannot, nobody can really see it, and she can't get it out because society is not there yet. Is not ready for that. And just the way DaCosta's kind of reoriented the entire sexual energy of the piece to make this mysterious character from the past, Islet Loveborg, female instead of male, and somehow moving the setting up a few decades did the trick, and it's not just a gimmick. And I think anybody who does know the play and just doesn't really quite like this adaptation because it changed too much. I don't know. I've seen too many adaptations of great plays and great everything that just, got into trouble and ended up being dull because they didn't change enough. So anyway, hats off to Nia DaCosta for making it the way she wanted to make it.
And in all that scrambling you've been describing, which makes this endlessly interesting, there's another element she threw in. Having done the other Candyman film, I detected this flare of horror going on in the depiction of Hedda. This is like an infernal Hedda. And a lot of the imagery emphasizes that. The costuming emphasizes that. There are moments where the many things you ask about this character, is she demon possessed? Is she downright demonic? I mean, like, where are some of these choices coming from? And there are a lot of motivations we've already touched on. And I would just throw that in because visually that's a choice that DaCosta, I think, is making here as well, which is also fascinating.
It's actually got more use of the color crimson red than like a Guillermo del Toro film. I mean, it's like...
Yes.
I love that insight, though, Michael, from you, from Ibsen, because even that informs the notion, or it allows me to understand without necessarily sympathizing with her any more than anybody else watching the film. We understand that it isn't any one thing or two things or three things that's driving her. She is potentially just this misfit. There is something fundamentally broken within her because of the way she can't interact with society. There's something missing, perhaps, I think, in the way you were describing there's some disconnection. And that is interesting. That's a fascinating idea. And you're right about, this is a movie that in the hands of other filmmakers, you would imagine it being like her husband, right. Stuffy, very stuffy. And there's nothing. I love the words that you were using, like ripping and alive, electric. Those are all terms that apply to this film and the direction of this film. The costume choices, the editing, the cinematography. It is one of those films that, Josh, as you were saying earlier, my reaction to even a film like Afternoons of Solitude, you're watching so many films. Michael, this is one for you as well. You're cramming in so many movies. A lot of them start to all blend together. Head is one of those movies, 11 through 20 for me. You put in and it stands out immediately because of these choices that we're talking about and the performances as well. Something special is happening with this film. So definitely seek out Nia DaCosta's Hedda if you haven't seen it. It's streaming exclusively on Prime Video. We do have a few more outliers we have to hit before we get into our shared picks. We're going to go through this fairly quickly, but there are some movies here, Josh, among our Golden Brick finalists, a lot of them, in fact, that actually made top 10 lists. That usually happens. I don't know if we've ever had quite this many, and you're mainly the one responsible. We'll all get to that. The Filmspotting Golden Bricks, this is actually our 17th annual commemoration. We're doing this for the 17th time, the Filmspotting Golden Brick Award. This is our film of the year by a new or emerging director. We did pretty well last year. Gave it to Payal Kapadia for All We Imagine as Light. I think that was my number, maybe my number one of the year. Okay, so yeah, we do often have some crossover here. In 2025, we had 14 films that made the Golden Brick long list. And we have narrowed that down now to 5 finalists, and 3 of those finalists made your top 10. One of them also made Michael's list, and Michael's going to do the honors in a second of telling us more about that choice. But we're going to go through these, and Josh, you're going to start us off because one of these Golden Brick nominees is your number 5 film of the year.
Boys Go to Jupiter. This is my, Hedda was for Michael maybe, and Afternoons of Solitude was for you, Adam. It sounds silly because this movie came out in the summer, I believe, but it's the movie I'm the most excited about right now at this moment, having just seen it. It was just a thrill. Listeners can go back to our previous episode. I mentioned it briefly, and we did run down that long list of Golden Brick titles. So if you're curious about what else has been in the mix this year, previous to these finalists, go back and listen to that show. I think I was kind of babbling because I hadn't written down any thoughts. I was just kind of in a giddy awe of the experience. But this is from writer-director Julian Glander, and he brings this lo-fi animated aesthetic to a pretty simple story, but also this has a lot of a humor that's very beguiling as the movie is following a group of teenagers in suburban Florida, basically hanging out. I described it on that show, Adam, a kinder, gentler South Park, and I think that holds up after a little more thought. Part of that comparison is the social commentary that's going on here very lightly. It mostly centers on one of these kids, Billy, who spends his days speeding around on a hoverboard, delivering food for a service called Grubster. His goal in life is to save up enough money, enough cash to move out of his older sister's garage. So this is very much low-key about the economic despair of America's youth, but it's hilarious with just so many funny asides, too many to keep up with. There are comic absurdities thrown in all over, and this treasure trove of clever mini songs, these stripped down electronica compositions that Glander did as well. I didn't mention the vocal work before, so I want to be sure to do that too, because that's part of what makes this such a treasure. You've got Sarah Sherman, Cole Escola, Julio Torres, Ava Victor, Janine Garofalo. They're all in it. The standout, though, is NPR Planet Money's personality Jack Corbett as Billy, the main character here. Man, he balances this self-awareness, teenage self-awareness, but also like a lingering naivete that's oddly touching for this character. Corbett also sings a few of those songs. This is especially the case. He has to toss off after every delivery this corporate mandated sign-off, have a grubby day. And there's something about the sad enthusiasm that Corbett delivers to that. There's just enough earnestness as if he thinks it might matter. It might get him 3 more cents if he actually acts like he means it. That makes the whole thing even sadder, but still incredibly funny. So I think this is one that could be like a perfect time capsule movie, aesthetically and thematically for right now. It looks like a mobile game Billy would play while zooming around on that hoverboard, not paying attention to where he's going. So it completely works with what this is trying to do. If you missed Boys Go to Jupiter, first time around like me, just go check it out. Absolutely, especially if you plan on voting for the Golden Brick, as listeners also have a chance to do.
I love, Josh, that you encourage listeners to go back and listen or re-listen to our previous show, but they can also just go to filmspotting.net/bricks if they'd like to see the long list and these finalists. We'll make it easy on them.
That's true.
They can check out all of these titles there. Boys Go to Jupiter, the first one that we are singling out. The next pick we will highlight is a documentary called Predators that is directed by David Ossett. And this is a documentary that chronicles the arc of the NBC show To Catch a Predator that ran, I can't believe this. Is it true? It only ran from 2004 to 2007. It somehow feels ubiquitous in our culture for 2 decades. And I know that as the movie does showcase, it has spawned so many versions that now exist on YouTube, and there are still some versions that Chris Hansen is producing himself, the famous host of To Catch a Predator. We talked about this a little bit, Josh, when I nominated it. It's a documentary that really challenges our comfort level with punishment as entertainment. It seems like a lot of us are very comfortable with that. It's overwhelmingly compassionate and humanistic in its approach, but will still make you, certainly made me, question your individual capacity for empathy when it comes to people who commit or attempt to commit these acts. And I still have not been able to have a conversation with anybody yet about the ending of this film, about the documentary ethics of the ending of this film, which is, it's entirely possible I'm completely overanalyzing. Maybe I am interpreting the ending and the formal approach to the ending of this film incorrectly. I don't know, because again, I haven't been able to really have a thorough conversation about it with anyone. I'm looking forward to that possibility. I do know that Predators was one of the most provocative films I saw this year, and for that reason, it is among our Golden Brick nominees.
I saw it at True False. I think it was the world premiere. No, maybe not. Maybe not the world premiere.
It might have been Sundance, actually. Is
Sundance.
premiere.
Okay, yeah, yeah, and it does bring up all these ethical questions about what do you overlook or sort of endorse in the name of indicting and confronting these sexual predators or worse. And
or those who covered them.
Well. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And or played the role of the bait essentially for on behalf of NBC's advertisers. Really, I thought people were in a very queasy state of suspense when in that audience. And again, I wouldn't have had, like we were talking about earlier, I would not have had that collective experience of several hundred people kind of just sort of wondering where this thing is going to go if we hadn't seen it in those conditions. So yeah, no, it's an 11 through 20 for me. All the way.
Me as well. And there is some suspense in that there is a showdown that the movie seems inevitably to be leading to, that the movie, it would feel incomplete without it. And I'll just leave it. I'll leave it there. You'll have to see the movie for yourself in order to determine whether or not it offers that to you. But I will note that's also part of part of how that's portrayed is also where some of my unease comes from. So a good movie to have a discussion about. Again, that's Predators. And that brings us to another documentary, Josh, and you have this one even higher on your list.
Grand Theft Hamlet is at number 3. I'll be brief on this because I've been touting this one since I saw it at the very beginning of the year and nominated it for a Golden Brick. Yeah, it's at the top of my list now. Basically, if it still is new to you, here's the idea. It's a documentary consisting entirely of footage from inside the video game Grand Theft Auto Online. Basically, 2 out-of-work actors, the United Kingdom during COVID. They tried to put on a version of Shakespeare's Hamlet within the game. They held auditions, they led rehearsals, and they ultimately did stage a complete performance. The results are very funny along the way, but what puts it on my list is because this is incredibly moving and touching in ways you would never expect, that are completely authentic and real world. And it's a bizarre movie that bizarrely renews your faith in humanity. I mean, if you can find humanity in this sort of scenario, you might be able to find it anywhere. And the filmmakers absolutely do. So that's Grand Theft Hamlet, another Golden Brick title to be sure to catch up with.
I am also a big fan of this one. And I will say it has been a big year of Hamlet in different ways. But I do feel like it may be the most illuminating riff on Hamlet. It was in this movie for me when a character delivers one of the most famous speeches in Hamlet on a beach to a random guy who keeps trying to shoot him.
It's true.
As happens in the game.
Right.
And it's just, it's such a great moment. And actually a very moving moment, even though I've just made it sound hilarious, which it also is.
And the way those things, Alison, though actually interweave with the themes of Hamlet in ways that, you know, these guys couldn't have anticipated, right? In just trying to stage this. So it's like the art shines through no matter what as well.
Thank you for coming. See our performance. It's nice to have an audience, even if it's just one. Right, okay. Oh, look, we got another audience member here. This is Hamlet, William Shakespeare's Hamlet. I believe this is the first time it's ever been performed at the Vinewood Bowl. If I could just request that you refrain from killing each other. And don't kill the actors either.
Just to make sure people know, Boys Go to Jupiter is currently available VOD. Predators, VOD and Paramount Plus. Grand Theft Hamlet is exclusively available on Mubi right now. So Josh, you have another Golden Brick finalist that is on your top 10 list, and it is at number 9. Michael Phillips, you have it even higher, and we're going to get to you and allow you to divulge where it fell on your list, how high, and explain a little bit of your reasoning behind it. But here again, we're going to let someone else steal a little bit of your thunder. It's a annual tradition here on Filmspotting that we hear from this listener this time of year, longtime listener, going back to, I don't know, he might have been about 9 years old when he started listening to this show, all the way from Brooklyn, New York. It is Josh Youngerman, and this movie is his number 1 of the year.
Hey, Josh and Adam, it's Josh Youngerman calling from Brooklyn, New York, because my favorite film of the year. My favorite movie of the year is Eva Victor's Sorry Baby. I think films a lot about this topic are usually not as messy in a good way and emotionally raw and also funny as Eva Victor's Sorry Baby.
There's some ways people treat you like you're a person who lives and breathes and thinks for themselves. And then some ways people treat you are not that way.
And I think it really captures the sort of, I guess, messy headspace that I think a lot of survivors go through after an event that, like the movie portrays, happens. But I think more so than that, I think the film isn't just about sexual assault. I think it's about one person's coming of age in terms of discovering their, gender identity and sort of coming to grips with sort of the person that they really are. And I think it's just remarkable and a perfect film and my favorite film of the year. Have a great rest of 2025 and a beautiful 2026.
Yeah, that's a great assessment from Josh on Sorry Baby. It was my number 3 of the year. There was a time when Eva Victor's writing and directing feature debut, in which she's also the star, would have found the theatrical audience it deserved. But, I think this is just where we are now. A lot of excellent films are just going to have to be discovered and chanced on by way of, other means a little later. But I just think this is a really compelling example of how and why traumas of any sort deserve more emotionally complicated stories than we usually get from how that's handled, because this is anything but a one-issue movie. I think the great strength of Victor as a writer is that she is not afraid of her own incredible sense of humor, very witty, both as an actor and a writer. And the way her character Agnes deals with all of this, what happened then to her as a student with the professor, how she feels about it now, how she wields that wit as a defense mechanism in various kind of stages of emotional crisis in the movie's present tense, it all kind of adds up to more than a story of one pretty awful incident. And so it's not an issue movie for me. It's really just a great indication of a new talent, accomplished actress, but a new directorial talent who really knows how to hit 2-3 notes at once. And it sounds simple, but it's damn hard. And a great supporting cast. Naomi Ackie, who can do no wrong. I think Lucas Hedges, John Carroll Lynch, everybody's good in this, but it is Eva Victor's show. And if you haven't seen Sorry Baby, see it. Yeah, it's that one really stuck with me.
Yeah, I had a chance to see it at the Chicago Critics Film Festival. And, this is the lowest ranking of the 3 Golden Brick finalists on my top 10 list. But I might have to vote for it when I get to that point. It's just one of the factors we do consider is, anticipating future work from a filmmaker, what that might look like, what this film points to. And man, Victor, to your point, Michael, such a multiple threat that I'm tempted that I might just have to go that way with the Golden Brick vote. But irregardless of that, just excellent, excellent film on all those counts.
Am I remembering something correctly? And maybe Alison just wanted to stay quiet. I think you may not be a fan of this film.
I don't think it works.
Yeah,
it's because I hate women. As we all know.
Of course.
Well, you gotta believe the readers.
Yeah, this is interesting though. Tell us more.
I just feel like it leans really hard on talking around things in a way that just felt to me like a shortcut to allow, like kind of creating blanks onto which the audience would kind of project more, I think, emotional complexity than I felt like the film actually summons for me on screen. I do feel like it is a film about, it is about the language we use for trauma. It's about the language we use in general. Like the main character is an English professor. The movie is very careful about, for instance, in that one scene when she first goes to see a doctor, and the doctor comes in and it was like, so you were raped, and they both her and her friend both flinch, and we're like, that's you, like this, we like the words we would use for this are more complicated for a lot of reasons. But I also feel like it kind of hides behind that as well. Like there are a lot of scenes in which I don't think it's just humor for deflecting. I think in some ways it talks around things because it uses the talking around as a way of yes, like I think generating or kind of trying to summon a feeling of more emotional weight than it actually ever manages. And I found that very frustrating, as much as I liked Aki's performance a lot in particular. But yeah, I found this a frustrating film that I just didn't connect with.
And you're not alone. I mean, some of the best writers in America, including yourself, on film, I think we're very conflicted, mixed at best. About it's more than just tonal shifts or things like that. It's more just about what's in there. And I think I found that. What I really loved in the scene that everybody sort of wrote about in detail, about where the camera is and the duration it sits there on the sidewalk, still waiting for her to tumble out of the front door after whatever, we learn what happens or what happened later. But to me, that felt like sort of inspired indirection. And I thought a lot of the verbal facility of the film and that character and Victor, just I think as a writer, period, kind of followed the same path. And I found that very fruitful and kind of telling. But other people, I think,
Yeah, I found it a little precious.
Yeah,
honestly.
precious and facile. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a good debating point, and yeah.
But I also feel, not that I think that you should have to baby a film, but also I think part of the reason I don't want to come in and smite this film from above is also it is the work of someone it is a first film. It is coming from someone who I think will have a fruitful career. So I feel mindful of that as well.
Well, the opinion of decidedly not one of the best film writers on cinema in America, mine, is I think it's a pretty good movie. It's in my 11 through 20. I'm more with Josh and Michael, and I didn't know for sure what scene you were going to mention. It's been a long time since I've seen it. Now that you talk about it, Michael, the street scene, I know exactly what you're referring to. The one that may come up later in the year for us still, Josh, when it comes to our rap party, the scene I can't shake in terms of performance, but direction, editing, cinematography even, and it speaks to what you were saying, Michael, about hitting more than one note at once. It's the scene in the car. It's the processing, Eva Victor, post this event, when the camera, we have to just sit and observe as she processes that moment. I think is the really powerful moment for me, where a lot of that movie fully clicked. So glad to see Sorry Baby. Another one that's 11 through 20 for me. I know it sounds like I must have 50 movies. No, I'm not cheating. We haven't gotten to all 10 of my 11 through 20 yet. Sorry Baby is our fourth Golden Brick nominee. We do have one more, and it's another documentary. It is Charlie Shackleton's Zodiac Killer Project. Now, this is one I'm guessing most people listening, or a good chunk of people listening, haven't had a chance to see. It's still playing in very limited release. It does come to VOD on January 6th. We're not ready to throw out exactly what the closing voting date is for the Golden Brick, but I can tell you it will be after January 6th. So if you want to be a good, dutiful voter and make sure that you see all of the candidates, then go ahead and wait. You'll have time. I promise you. You'll have multiple days to vote. Give yourself a chance to see Zodiac Killer Project. If you can't see it in the theater, wait for it to come out VOD on January 6th. This is a movie that, Josh, you saw, I think, at that Critics Film Festival as well.
Yep.
Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. And I saw Sundance on demand. It was a Sundance movie that I was able to see at home, but it played at the Refocus Film Festival here in Iowa City as well. And sometimes during this top 10 show, Josh, we like to work in quotes from some of our favorite veteran critics. I thought, how about some rookies? Can I be kind of a proud dad for a second? Because one of the assignments, and Michael knows how proud I am of my students. He's interacted with these very smart producing film criticism students. One of their assignments was to cover the Refocus Film Festival in pairs. They had to choose a movie, then they had to come and record a 20 to 30 minute podcast about it and produce a podcast not unlike a Filmspotting episode. And a few pairs covered this film, Zodiac Killer Project, and listening and grading those episodes was so fun and so rewarding. And they had such great insights about the movie, which I'm going to give a few of them to you now without spoiling anything. Hopefully it will just entice people listening to seek out Zodiac Killer Project. They talked about how active a viewing experience it is, that it's a collaborative experience between the director, Charlie Shackleton, who you're hearing his voiceover the entire time, the collaboration between him as the narrator and filmmaker and the audience. One of my students talked about how we see him talking and hear him. Eventually we see him in a recording studio. We see his reflection in the glass, and they noted how the clever coincidence, it is a clever coincidence that he's reflecting on these films and his experience with the genre, the true crime genre, as he's literally reflecting in the glass. Some people have criticized this film for being better suited perhaps as a podcast, as an audio podcast. And a couple of students noted that no, actually it needs to be a film. It's much better as a film because Shackleton takes advantage of visual techniques like the use of still shots, and you can't imagine this film being, the subject matter being as effective as it is without the use of the zoom ins that he heavily relies on. Again, the static shots, the empty space that I mentioned as well. They talked about things like the distinction between entertainment with this genre and when something's entertaining versus engrossing versus sensationalized, which the nuances of that I found really interesting. And then they talked about with true crime, and especially this particular project and the Zodiac Killer, how you think about closure and the lack thereof sometimes. And overall with this genre, its flaws that Shackleton as a filmmaker certainly touches on and is critical of, but also shares some of his own appreciation for. He is clearly a fan of the genre, as critical of it as he is. And some of the students talked about why we are as a culture, and some of them as students even are obsessed and are passionate about the true crime genre. I found it illuminating. I found the film as a piece of criticism illuminating, and that's why it's among our Golden Brick finalists.
Yeah, I think that note about the film techniques employed is a very important one, Adam, because for me, that's what stood out the most is Shackleton not only reusing the cliches, but recycling them in different ways, and in some shots, finding his way towards new techniques that he might, you imagine, have employed if he had gotten to make the film. So just on that cinematic level, it would not be fair to disregard Zodiac Killer Project because it shouldn't be a documentary.
But working in documentary these days, true crime just has this sort of gravitational pull. After the project fell apart, I just kept replaying all these scenes in my head. Scenes I'd never get to shoot. Mysteries I'd never have a chance to unravel.
Alison, what about this one? Have you seen it? Can you shoot this one down, or do you like it?
Oh, no, I'm a fan of this one. I do feel like the reason it wasn't like hot, like in my top 20, I think was I did feel like it was a little slighter in terms of just scope. I think it's really witty. I think it is very clever as a piece of like media criticism that also is very honest about being like, yeah, we know that this kind of like this particular technique, this particular turn is like what they always do, and yet it's so compelling, isn't it? Like, it's so compelling. Yes. What is it about this genre that we find so compelling? Mm-hmm. I found it a really enjoyable, clever film.
What happens now? We have those 5 movies: Boys Go to Jupiter, Predators, Grand Theft Hamlet, Sorry Baby, Zodiac Killer Project, a formidable lineup. You, the listeners, do get to help choose a winner. You can vote in the Golden Brick poll right now if you've seen all 5, or if you just can't wait. You can vote now at filmspotting.net. We'll rank our picks. Producer Sam gets to rank his picks, and we will announce the Golden Brick winner at our year-end wrap party. Right now, we don't have a live show planned. It's going to be an in-studio year-end wrap party. It's not going to be as festive, will it, Josh? I mean, will you bring, I don't know, a party hat or something?
Crackers. Adam, we do crackers over here. We haven't actually done one yet, but you pull both ends, I understand, and it kind of explodes. So,
and then you get a paper crown inside, and then you have to wear it. You're legally required to wear it for the rest of the day.
YouTube viewers, that's what you'll get to see for the wrap party. Me wearing a paper crown, apparently.
Okay. Everybody tune in for that. More on the Golden Bricks at filmspotting.net/bricks. Still to come, our consensus films of the year picks and our number 1 films of the year.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.